This podcast is brought to you by C Pawn and Gun. If you guys have any gun needs or just like talking guns or, have any kind of pawn, he's not a huge pawn shop guy. I was in there yesterday or a couple days ago and we were talking rings. He's got a bunch of gold rings and he's got a fascination about rings and gold coins and stuff like that. So if you ever want to just go hang out with someone, talk shop, go check out Charles over at C Pawn and Gun and he will have a blast guaranteed. Thank you, C Pawn and Gun, for sponsoring this podcast. So exciting. Let's get this thing started. Welcome to another Paris, Texas, a podcast. This is a podcast where you get to listen to people's stories, people that have either influenced or lived in the city of Paris, Texas. I love hearing their stories, and I can't wait for you to hear the next guest. All right, guys, welcome to this podcast. I know I say this at the beginning of every podcast, but I truly do mean it every time I say it. I am super excited about this podcast. I have been trying to get this person on for probably a year. I've asked multiple times. He's dodged me a few times. We were just talking about him being just a little bit nervous about being on the podcast. But Greg Key, what is up?
How's it going, Broadway?
I'm
so excited to be here.
That's awesome. So we have been friends for a long time.
Yes, we have.
And I was actually
in many places.
I was actually this past Sunday talking to somebody who hadn't met you yet, and I told them they needed to go shake your hand. And I was telling them, I was telling how we were good friends. And I said one of my favorite things about Greg is like when you meet him, people don't know the amount of nerd that you are until they actually sit down and have a conversation with you.
That's probably true.
There's
yeah.
You
Thankfully, I don't exude nerdiness on the surface.
You don't, but that's probably one of the things I love about you the most. Is like you're like 007 of nerdness. Like you're suave on the outside.
I will take that.
Super nerd on the inside. Literally before we started this podcast, we were talking about Batman.
Yes, we were.
Which is funny. We're going to put a cool graphic that I made for you for one of your birthdays, and it's got you as Batman photoshopped in and me as Robin photoshopped in.
Right. Yep. I don't know what you mean by photoshopped.
Oh, I forgot that was the real one.
But
I photoshopped one, and then we did a real one.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so... So where were you born?
I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Yes, all my family's from Tennessee, but my dad worked for offshore oil companies, doing engineering, and so my parents had moved down to New Orleans, and I was born there and lived there long enough to acquire a love for Cajun food. It's always my favorite.
You still cook Cajun food, don't you?
I cook pretty much any kind of food that I am able to cook.
Will Walker does some Cajun cooking too. Did you know that?
I did not. That is a very good thing to know, though.
You should bring up some of your. He probably can talk recipes and stuff with you.
That's good. I will do that.
Actually, speaking of Will, I've been trying to get him and his wife on this podcast. I need to go ask them again.
That would be an awesome...
They're ones I've asked multiple times and haven't been able to get them locked in yet.
Yeah, I don't know why people have a problem with that. I mean...
This is the best podcast ever. They should be...
Yeah, I have been waiting for my chance. So.
Okay, so how many years were you in New Orleans?
Oh, only 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Then did most of my growing up around the Memphis area.
But your dad stayed in... Did your dad stay in New Orleans?
No. They moved back up to be close to family.
So did you have any family in New Orleans that stayed in New Orleans?
Not...
So in 4 years...
Not blood kin.
You had so much New Orleans in you that you still love the food and everything.
Oh, I love the city. I never get tired of going down there, and I can't eat enough of the food. I love the place.
That's awesome. And it all sunk in the first 4 years of your life.
New Orleans?
Well, just the
I mean, it kind of did. Yes, the love of it did.
Right.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so where'd y'all move to after when you were 4-ish?
We lived in West Tennessee, in the Memphis area. I grew up in a small town that was actually about an hour away from Memphis. Smaller than Paris, Somerville, Tennessee, where I was during my formative years of growing.
Okay.
Where I started buying comic books for 25 cents at the drugstore. That's where I spent all my paper route money. Burned it on comic books.
Burned it on comic books. If you had to guess, how many comic books have you owned in your lifetime?
Thousands of comic books.
Do you still have a bunch of them?
Not a one.
Not a one.
Not a one. I don't.
So, okay. What was your favorite ever comic book? Do you have a single favorite?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I was really into X-Men in the late 80s and 90s when they first introduced, put Wolverine on the team and changed the team all up. I was a big X-Men fan. So
awesome. So was that how old were you when you started getting into comic books?
Gosh, I must have been only around 7 or 8 when I started reading them.
Wow. And then you read them through most of your life?
Oh yeah. I did. I was still, one of my favorite things to do, we moved to Paris in 2008, and at the time, oh my gosh, it's gone. Hastings, yeah, was still open, and one of my favorite activities is like I didn't spend money on comic books, but I would go in there, get a cup of coffee, and go to the rack and pick up my few favorite titles just to look and see what was going on, keep up what's going on in the universe. So I miss having a comics store, comics rack here in town.
That would be awesome. Wonder we should try to find someone to put a comic corner in their store.
It would be. I mean, if I had all the time and money, I'd love to have a store that was like coffee and comic books and gaming area, and let's just hang out and do that stuff.
Segue. So, at what age did you start getting into gaming?
Probably in junior high.
Junior high?
Yeah.
All right, that's a great segue. We didn't skip too much time.
Yes.
So when we say gaming, explain to people, because we're not talking about Uno. What kind of gaming are we talking about?
Probably in junior high was when I started with my friends playing Dungeons and Dragons, which my mom hated that. I had some of the books at the house, and my mom thought it was just Satan influenced, and she was afraid that Dungeons and Dragons was going to drag me straight to the pit of hell. But yeah, I'd hang out, had some friends that played, and for a while we even had a game that was going. We'd go at school, like during study hall in my high school years, we would meet in the band hall and play for an hour, and played with some guys in college, and still every once in a while we'd get together and play. Hadn't in a while.
Well, on that topic, I didn't. So growing up, I was very much a loner. Very different than the person people see and meet today. But I don't know, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, you and I started playing with Jed Irwin.
Yep.
It was my first experience with it, and it wasn't Dungeons and Dragons, but it was the same concept. I forgot what
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder.
Yes.
Where you create a character, and a lot of this you see, a lot of what Dungeons and Dragons is basically the exact same thing that a video game is. You have a character, you build that character, you assign it points, or you assign it like how much stamina it has, how much strength it has, how much health it has, stuff like that.
Yeah. Personality.
You do all of this stuff in PlayStation games right now.
Right.
It just has a computer program that does it all for you. And what it's like a love-hate relationship, at least with my experience in that realm, is like you had to do all of that on a piece of paper and remember all of those numbers, and there's always like you'd have your character chart, and you'd have all the numbers for that, but then you'd have like 6 pieces of scratch paper because you'd have to like add up how many of this or how many you want to add of that, and But there's a lot of strategy in that game as well.
There can be, yeah, and it's a lot of fun. See, I loved back in the day. I did all mine on notebook paper, and I would probably like redo them and tear up the old ones like once a week just to keep it all organized. But
Well,
back in the day, it all had to be done on paper,
paper,
and
yeah.
it was all pen and paper tabletop games, and it was the good stuff, man.
Something I loved about you is you, at least when I played with you, is you would go and I mean you would probably lose sleep over thinking about how to build your character to be a better character. And
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah,
we
yeah, I
would
was a little
we
too
would meet
obsessive
once
about
a
that.
week, and then you would come back from the week break, and then you'd have like all this stuff that you thought about and wanted to change and wanted to add, and like it was some deep thought that you put into it, which was really cool.
Yeah, well, yes and no. Too much time and energy burned on that kind of thing. And I was the same way when I'd play video games, which I did plenty of later. When you had characters on video games, it was the same way. So,
Were you always that way, even when you were in middle school? Like that mindset of how to tackle that problem?
I think I was, but honestly, I think I've decided that the thing about those games and video games for me, honestly, was like I was I too I was a skinny, guy, had big glasses, growing up in junior high. I also was not, what did you call me? The James Bond of nerdiness that you see now. And
You were the more of the actual nerdiness.
yeah, I was just the nerdiness without the Bond. But I think that like having a world where you could be exactly who you wanted to be, and then if you messed up or made that, well, like video games were like that too. It's like if you messed up and make a mistake, you just start all over again, and you do it right. And I think there was something about that was always very attractive to me, because I could just be exactly who I wanted to be. And if I decided I wanted to change something about that to make it better, you just tweak it, And I was always trying to probably be the best version of me, probably trying too hard to do that. Since I wasn't happy with who I was trying to make myself someone cool and powerful, which is probably also why I really liked comic books,
Right.
and looking at characters and getting all into that stuff. So,
Awesome. Okay, so leaving middle school
yes.
and going into high school,
Mm-hmm.
like you still did all these same things throughout high school, right?
I did.
Where was that kind of your thing, or was there sports, or was there any other thing that kind of was like your thing through school?
I was in band in high school
What'd you
because I was a percussionist. I played drums in band in high school. So, where there was kind of a nerd association with band too when I was in high school in the 80s, but at least I was on the cool end of that because I played drums. So, and I had sticks I could hit people with if they called me a nerd. But which I don't think band people are nerds at all. I think we've evolved from that since the 80s, thankfully. So did that. I played basketball a couple years. I ran track a couple
Because
years.
you're tall, and I could see basketball and track fitting in your realm.
Yes, and most people thought that. In fact, I was not very good at either one of them. So, and I did theater. I did theater.
What was your first ever play that you were in? Do you remember?
Yes, Grease.
Grease
was the first one.
Who did you play? Do you remember who you played?
I do. I played Vince Fontaine. I was the adult smarmy guy who was the host at the dance contest, who was hitting on the high school girl. The main brain, Vince Fontaine.
Raymond Fontaine.
I got to say things like, "Throw your mittens around your kittens and away we go."
That's awesome.
Which I still say probably 2 or 3 times a week. No, not really.
Actually, both our kids, you have a daughter that's around the same age as my oldest.
Yes.
And
they have also been friends for a long time.
They have been friends most of their lives, I believe. And they are in a theater class together.
Yep.
Which is kind of fun.
Yep.
Maybe they'll get a chance to play Grease together.
Yeah, you never know.
Being the same thing. We do a lot of in my family. We do a lot of theater things. It seems to be our kids' favorite thing to do. One of their favorite things to do.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Amelia's into it. I get the sense. I don't know if it's going to be Evelyn's thing or not. Being two, she strikes me as more of a sumo wrestler, but we'll see. We'll see how she comes out.
Isn't it crazy how kids can be so different?
It is.
I mean, you've got 4.
I have 4, yeah.
So
considering that my oldest is, well, I've got 24, 21, 9, and 2.
Right.
So, and they are all quite different.
And each and every one of them are so different.
Yeah.
I had this, prior to becoming a parent of 3, I had this massive misconception that kids were going to be, like, similar.
Yeah.
I thought that my first and second for sure. My youngest is only a year old, so it's kind of hard to tell what he's going to be. But I really thought that they were going to be very much alike, and they couldn't be more different.
Yeah, I mean they'll have some similarities just based on their family,
Right.
and likes and dislikes and stuff. But yeah, they're very unique personalities and the way they come out, and it gets even more interesting when they move into adulthood, having to go through that section of them like becoming adults and leaving your roof and really kind of leaving your rule and having to let go and acknowledge that your adult kids are going to make decisions that you can't control anymore, and you have to kind of figure out how you're going to manage it from the side and while you're still wanting the best from them. It's a very interesting process. You've got a lot to look forward to.
I was doing a job yesterday at North Lamar High School, and I was in a classroom full of a bunch of kids, and I was in the job, so I was kind of in work mode, but I stopped for a second, kind of looked around at all the kids, and I mean they were all great. They weren't doing anything crazy. They were just doing normal stuff, and it just hit me. It's like, I am not ready for my kids to be in this phase.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know. That's super rabbit trail. I kind of like it when I rabbit trail sometimes. But okay, so high school, you stayed nerd, but you added some more nerd factors like band and basketball.
Yes.
Both of those aren't really nerd.
I probably did basketball and track to try to pull away from the nerd factor,
Right.
but
It
I
didn't
think I just look like a nerd playing basketball.
So when you graduated high school, what was the plan?
It was the year was 1987, and the plan was to go to college. I went to started college in the fall, pre-med.
Pre-med, really?
Pre-med, yeah. At
I didn't know that.
Yes, at Ole Miss. I was an Ole Miss rebel for a couple of years, but I was only pre-med for one semester of those couple of years before I decided that I think I changed my major a total of five times in college, and most of that, 3 or 4 of those were in the first 2 years at Ole Miss, and then I transferred to Memphis State and graduated. I still managed to make it out in 4 years with my degree, so I didn't squeeze 4 years into 7 like some of my friends.
So what did you land on?
Psychology.
Psychology?
Yeah.
Wow, I just
Got a
was
psychology
talking with
degree.
another podcast person who went through psychology that
Mm-hmm.
actually is going to air after this one. So there's a little sneak peek. There's a person coming up after you that's also going to be in psychology.
Yeah, it was cool. I think when I took abnormal psychology, that was what hooked me. I thought this is interesting enough to study for a major, especially since I need to quit changing mine. So
with changing yours, because this was part of the conversation, but like, did you find it hard? Like, was it kind of like finding yourself, like finding that thing that would like, that made you, that you were super interested in? Does that make sense?
yeah, in some ways it was, because I mean when I started, it was like pre-med, pre-physical therapy, and I thought I can do this and I can do well, and it's pretty interesting, and really the sciences of everything, the sciences were like kicking my butt,
The classes.
Yeah, the classes. I wasn't doing well, which didn't seem like it would reflect well for someone who was trying to get into medicine. And I tried like journalism and PR for a little bit. I was interested in international business, and I thought I might want to travel and do stuff, but just ended up psychology and counseling and learning about things that people were struggling with in their minds and trying to help them that way. It just kind of seemed to click with me pretty well.
I found it took me, which I didn't go to any school. I took like a week or two of one semester of school, and I quickly figured out that was not me.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against school. I just didn't. I didn't fit there. I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. You know this about me, but it took me living life experiences to kind of find myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I found myself, I was able to excel in that. I couldn't imagine being in the place where you're in a school trying to find that thing that like defines you, and that you're almost, because I mean a lot of times you're picking a career for what could be the rest of your life, and you're still 20 years old.
Yeah, you could be. I feel like I've gotten a lot better appreciation for that even in the last decade. Neither of my older kids decided to go to college. My oldest, my daughter, she also tried it a couple of times, like for a semester, and just didn't feel like it was for her. And that used to really bother me. And I feel like even when I went to college, there was just this idea that like that's the thing that you did after high school if you were going to be at all successful in life. And I feel like that mindset was very prevalent at the time. And probably it still is. But I would just also then say, in my experience, honestly, I have found more and more people, especially probably in the last decade, as my older children were making that transition, and I've had to think through that and worry about that. But I've met a lot of people who are very successful and or very happy in what they're doing that did not go to college at all. And it hadn't been a necessity for them. So
I was talking, we had this conversation, my business partner in Dead Cat Media, Leah, she went to school and I didn't go to school. And we obviously do both the same thing. She didn't necessarily go to school for what we do, but she went to college and I didn't go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about this idea, and we both kind of agree that there are a lot of professions that require schooling, require college. Agree with that? But now there are a lot of professions that require just like a trade school,
right,
where you can go in for 1 year, 10 months, 2 years, and different lengths depending on what it is. But in addition, there's a third option where there is like my field, there is a way to pick up a camera and push buttons until you figure out what they do and how to work it best.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a living off of it and be happy with it, like myself, and not have gone to any college.
Right.
Now, it might be harder. It's a different way of learning, but I feel like it was easier for me to learn that way than it would have been to be in a classroom reading a book about it.
Yeah. And that's what I told my older kids. I think I pushed my oldest to go to college a lot more than I pushed my 21-year-old, my son, who's with YWAM right now in Oregon, and he hasn't done any college at all. He did a 6-month stint with YWAM and took some classes with them and traveled internationally and did missions outreach, and now he's back on staff with them. And I encouraged him to go to college, but I was quite aware by that time that it was going to be his decision. He was going to do it. So both of them, I told them, I said, the only thing I can tell you is if you're not going to go, and you're not going to have some of the doors available to you that having a college degree can automatically open, you just need to prepare yourself to work hard. Mm-hmm. You need to be ready to work hard to do what you do, and
That's
you'll be okay.
I was going to say. That is, I think what a lot of kids don't. I don't know. I hate to say this because I'm not in their lives in this day and age, but I feel like what a lot of people are missing is that drive, that initiative to go out and really conquer what they love doing. So once you, like, half the battle is trying to figure out what it is that you love doing. What are you passionate about? But once you find that out, the journey's not done. You
Right.
now have to find that drive to excel in that as much as you can. I mean, I struggle with this still today. Like I love what I do, and it's one of this. I've talked about this. It's a really weird thing because like what I do for a living is both a hobby and a job.
Right.
So like when I geek out, I'm on a website looking at camera gear. Well, I also, if I get camera gear, it's also for work. So it's like a weird, like a lot of people with their hobbies buy hobby stuff on the side and then they do it over the weekends and yada yada yada. Or I just if I'm doing my stuff over the weekends, it's still work.
Yeah, that's true. Has there been a term coined for that yet? I mean, can you call it like a jobby or something like that? If it's a job and a hobby.
I don't know. A jobby sounds good. We'll just coin that. Can we trademark it?
Do it. Trademark. Boom.
All right. Sorry, we sidetracked a little bit again. Okay, so you finished psychology,
Yes.
and then what was the plan? What was the goal?
I worked for about a year in a children's and youth behavioral lockdown unit, which had lots and lots of interesting stories for what happened there. But then I decided to go, I was trying to decide if I wanted to do youth ministry or do counseling as a career because I had done a lot of camp ministry that I really enjoyed and enjoyed working with youth and enjoyed doing counseling, and decided to do youth ministry and came to Texas for the first time for me to go to school. I went to seminary in Dallas in the mid-90s.
In the mid-90s.
Mm-hmm. That was my first experience with living in Texas. Big
Really?
D.
What seminary did you go to?
Dallas Theological Seminary.
I think I remember. We've talked about this before, I think. So how long were you in seminary school?
2 years.
2 years?
2 years.
And then did you get a job after that?
I did get a job. I was initially intending or thinking that I would head back to Tennessee, where my family was, and instead it was the beginning of the road of me not living in Tennessee now for over half my life. I went to Kansas City, to the Kansas City area, and got a job working in a church there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how long were you in? Was that as a youth minister?
Yes, I was associate pastor. Did youth and Christian education and
As
all that
most
stuff.
churches, you wore many hats.
I wore many hats. I did. There were exactly 2 people on staff. So
Wow.
the senior pastor did the preaching and whatnot, and I did everything else.
That's awesome.
Huh?
So how long were you in Tennessee?
Tennessee?
Not Tennessee.
In Kansas City?
Sorry, Kansas City.
12 years.
12
96 to 2008.
Wow. And then that 2008 is when you made your way down towards Paris, right?
That was it.
So what was your first impression of Paris, Texas?
My first impression, it was, I had a hard time moving from Kansas City
'Cause it's a bigger
to
city.
Paris. Yeah, because I grew up in a small town, and when I moved to Memphis, I was happy to be living in the city. And then I moved to Dallas, which was an even bigger city, and enjoyed living in Dallas. And then moved to Kansas City and enjoying living in Kansas City. So I had lived somewhere in a city for 20 some odd years of my life, and then when I moved to Paris, that was a big transition. There were some different things going on. I had gone through a divorce, and my older kids, who were around 12 and 9 at the time, I gotten remarried, to a wonderful gal whose family is from Paris, and that was part of what brought us down here. But then my older kids stayed in Kansas City, so that was a tough part of the transition. And then moving to a small town, I'm a total foodie. I made it a point when I was dating my my wife, before and after we even got married there, that I tried to find a different restaurant to go to every time we went out. I really wanted to hit as many restaurants as I could in Kansas City, and I had a great time doing that. And when I moved to Paris, it took me like 3 weeks to go to every restaurant on a date, and then I was done. So yeah, it was tough.
Funny story. You are the guy that anytime we're traveling anywhere, you are the guy that finds the restaurant.
Yeah.
Especially with technology this day and age, you have multiple apps that you kind of peruse through to find the best rated one, and it's usually, with my experience, it's usually off the beaten path.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, you're not gonna wind up at Chili's.
Yeah, I
Nothing wrong
love
with Chili's, but that's just.
I love to have good food, and I love to find unique places to eat, and that's why it's been exciting. Some of the new restaurant offerings and things opening up and coming to Paris that's been super great.
So when you see a new place opening in Paris, are you eager to go hop in and try it out?
Yeah, usually. I mean, if it's somebody opening up and bringing some new food to town, I'm ready to get in there and check the quality of it and see, because I have learned to very much appreciate the places in town that I go where I really enjoy the food and just go for good. So yeah, I'm always excited to see new places opening up. So
okay, jumping back, when you got here in Paris, was your first job at Goodland?
Yes.
I remember things.
You do remember things.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my first job moving here was at Goodland Academy up near Hugo, the boys' home. I got that job about a month after we moved here because Millie had her job with Advanced Heart Care that she has had since the time we moved here. And I am the one who has bounced around careers since we've been here for 12 years. So I was at Goodland first, was the school administrator, which was supposed to be kind of more of a principal and manager at first, and then they lost a teacher, so I was actually in the classroom. So I had a classroom where I was teaching 6th through 12th grade every subject. They used like a homeschool curriculum, and so I was managing a classroom full of boys who were at the boys' home and teaching them during the day. So
that's awesome. So how long were you at Goodland?
I was there for a couple of years. Till 2010. Yeah, 2010. 2008 to 2010.
And then where'd you go from there?
Paris Junior College.
PJC.
I worked as the Upward Bound director. And that was a big part, actually, even seeing some of the programs at PJC and their vocational school and seeing some of the people go in and out. I know a lot of guys who have gone through the welding program and different things, and that was really probably one of the things that made me see, like, okay, there are some people who are not going to, college and the 4-year college degree route kind of thing, who are just doing well, like knocking it out and doing well. And
crazy story is, so my junior to senior year, I did, was it 1 or 2 years? I think I might have done 2 years of Upward Bound. So it might have been sophomore to junior, junior to senior. And this was back in the late 90s. So we have that weird connect before, like, obviously there were different timings, but you were part of it and I was part of it, but at 2 different times. Which is cool. Which is a really cool program. Is it still going?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, still going.
It's a really cool program. It's people should look into that.
Yep, it's a neat program. Yeah, we have interesting connects between, like, there's our China trip stories, and there's
so
other
they've heard
there's other things.
They've heard my China story. You want to tell your China story?
China story. When I was back in Kansas City, one of the jobs I had there, I worked for a couple of different ministry organizations, and one of them was called Mercy and Truth Medical Missions, and my job was to recruit teams of medical professionals for short-term medical relief trips. And so I organized a trip to China. And as the team was building, I noticed this stunningly beautiful redhead member of the team. And I wound up getting to go on that trip to China as one of the team leaders. And that was where Millie and I got acquainted, was on the trip to China. We went to Chengdu in kind of southern or southwestern China, and then took a bus ride up to a city called Mabian that was in the mountains in the Himalayas there, and went out every day doing medical clinics in little villages, which for me consisted of getting the team to the village and then standing outside, usually dancing like a monkey to entertain the children while the medical people actually went in and did the work and stuff. Had a cool experience of meeting a guy and hiking with him up a couple of hours into the mountains and spending the night in a little mountain village, and which was neat. But then coming back down and going, and after the trip and going back to Beijing, and so Millie and I got to know each other while we were being American tourists around Beijing. We were very conspicuous. Everywhere we went, people wanted to touch her hair and take pictures with her. Because she has the fiery red hair, and then people would notice me with her because I was about 2 feet taller than pretty much everyone that we would bump into. So yes, it was a life-changing trip all around.
That's awesome. So back in Paris, you were at the college. How long were you there for?
I was at the college for about 2 years also. Yes.
And then was it the church after that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was church after that.
So you came on at Calvary, right?
Yep.
And this is where the Broadway and the Keys collide.
That's right. This is where our stories intersected.
And so I was working at Calvary, and you came on staff. What, you associate?
Yes.
And I was kind of media / multiple hats guy, and which you were. Everyone that works at church is multiple hats guy, so it's just the way it works out. But we kind of hit it right off. We were like super. I don't know. I was
Batman and Robin.
We were like Batman and Robin, and Robin. Yeah, and I am totally okay with being Robin.
Macaroni and cheese.
Yes.
Peanut butter and jelly.
But we did some gaming together, like video gaming. We did some not board gaming, but like, what do they call it? What kind of gaming is that?
Online gaming?
It's not RPG, because that's a video gaming thing, but board, not D&D. It's doesn't have a name, like
D&D?
D&D.
That's RPG. And then online RPG. It's MMORPG.
Oh, okay. There's what I'm getting confused.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
yes. Our shared love of science fiction and Star Wars and
nerdism.
Cool videos and fun stuff.
Yeah.
My admiration of your beard.
Well, about that. But no, we would find ourselves often on a ledge or at a table just talking, and we still do to this day, just talking either the next superhero movie that's coming out, or next Star Wars that's coming out, or this game or that game, or should we meet up and play a game, or like it's all kinds of, there's just a lot of, I don't know.
Lots of good times. And then when Amelia and Liam got acquainted with one another, and like little staff kids running around running things, they were just hanging out all the time too. So
when they come together, it's like next level excitement.
Yes.
I don't know how else to describe it. Liam's like kind of this, he's on the same level all the time. And sometimes sometimes he's a little more excited, and sometimes he's a little less excited. But when he meets up with Amelia, it's like
it notches up.
It
There's some
notches
sort
up.
of strange synergy there that both of them. It's like one. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I was gonna say it's like one of them is carrying around crack and gives it to the other one, and they both just take a hit of something crazy, and they get nutty together. It's kind of fun.
That's funny.
What I remember though about when we met too is the thing I like is I remember sitting around and having conversations with you about your dreams to wish that you could just like take this whole media thing and like run with it, and your thoughts about what it would look like and what you would like to do and what you wish you could accomplish to like do with your life for your job that was also your hobby. And so I always look back that and think about, I feel like that I was around for the initial daydreaming and dreaming about what is now Dead Cat Media, and that's been super, super cool to see you like go from there to here and see this thing grow and become the media juggernaut that it is.
Aww.
It's awesomeness.
So on that note, like I feel like a lot of people have these dreams and they have these thoughts, and like for me, it just took getting out and doing it, and it doesn't matter. I mean, the same with this podcast. I dreamed about doing this podcast for it wasn't at the same time.
Me too.
Later. It was later on, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I probably overthought about it, but it took me going out and doing a couple of friends. I mean, if you go back and look at the first handful, they're all people that were fairly close to my life, that were easy to ask to be on the podcast. Probably the first half of, the first 6 months of podcasts were probably that way. And before I started branching out to like people I didn't know, like I had zero way of like navigating that conversation. But it just takes, and I always talk about this on the podcast, but I really just want to encourage people. It really takes a person to go out and just do it. It doesn't matter if you're going to be bad at it or good at it or you don't have the equipment. The podcast program that I use, literally you can hold your phone up to your mouth and record your podcast. Or, I mean, if you want to be a photographer, you can quite literally use any phone on the market and be a photographer. Like, I mean, you can at least start there and then grow into getting stuff. And that's just things in my realm. If you have an interest in psychology, I'm sure there's something you can start doing to learn stuff to prepare you for school. That's more of a school-related one.
That's right. I mean, if you're looking to meet psychologists, just start acting weird in public, and you will get the chance to meet psychologists and talk to them.
I thought you were going to say they could always come meet me, but you got a totally different route on that. So that built that was the beginning of a phenomenal friendship, and it only took me 2 years to get you to get on my podcast, but
yeah, that's how close we are.
And that's how excited you were. Skipping through a little bit, so we worked a little bit there, and then we kind of separated and we did kind of different things for a little bit, and then sorry, I'm fast forwarding just a little bit, but I wanted to jump to this story. So I got on staff at CF Paris, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
That sounds about right.
Forgive me if I don't remember the exact date, but and I remember having conversations. Actually, it was outside of Jed's church. You and I had a couple conversations about this church back when. I mean, obviously, it was back far enough that we were in the old building. But and I don't remember. They're kind of probing questions. Like you had like a lot. There were a few that were concerns, and then there were a few that were like just kind of figuring out more about what it was.
Right.
And I remember thinking at that moment, I was like, man, I wish he could just come visit with me, like visit the church with me, just so he could hands-on see what's going on. because Kimmy and I fell in love with this church, and I'm not trying to plug the church, but this is just part of the story, and that's what this podcast is about, is people's stories. But it's such a real place for me. Like, and I'm not saying other churches aren't real. I'm saying for me, this place is just so real. And I really wanted you to, and I'm using real a lot, I really wanted you to come and at least experience it. Anyway, fast forward a few years, and I started kind of nonchalantly championing you as much as I humanly possibly could.
I think there was some chalant in that. I'm not sure how nonchalant it was. You were chalantly championing me.
I quite literally. So you started going to church here how long ago? A year or two ago?
A year, yeah.
And I remember telling somebody, I was like, it's like we have Michael Jordan on our team, and we've got him benched. And we're not using him. He's that good at what he does. And sure enough, it only took me a year, but I got you on staff here.
You did.
At Sea of Paris, which I'm super excited about.
Me too. Yes, you were definitely the president of my very unofficial fan club. I think you're the president and the sole member.
Is that not what a Robin does for a Batman?
That's right, man. That's right.
So,
that's what it is.
Awesome.
You doed it.
Okay, I have a question for you. This is I ask a lot of people this, and sometimes I forget, but I try to ask as many guests as I can. What is your favorite place in Paris, Texas to go? It can be anything. It can be food. It doesn't have to be food. It can be, I don't know, standing on the Eiffel Tower looking into a redhead's eyes. I don't know.
It's food.
It's food.
Yeah, it's totally food. It's totally food. You know, my favorite place to go is it's a taqueria on Lamar Street, and it's so awesome that I can't even really say the name of it.
You still can't.
It starts. It's like it's Panificadora El, and there's a long T word that I can't say. But man, yes, I can't get to that place enough. I love it. Whenever I was having lunches, like back in the day, I was always, I was hitting people up all the time, like, hey, let's do lunch. I was like, oh, let's do I need to do a ministry lunch with so-and-so. I would do like 3 of them there a week. I was there all the time. I could not get enough of the tacos. They always had horchata or something made that I was drinking. I was there like last week when it got really cold, and they had, because I saw on their Facebook, they had this drink, and I had never had it before. And I told you about it. It was like Mexican hot chocolate. It was called like champorado or something. Never had that before, but I had a big old cup of it that day, and everything there is great. I get excited every time I go there. Love that place.
They did not pay me for that sponsorship plug. No,
I, on the other hand, have gotten free flan for bringing people there. So, if you guys are listening, I'll take some more free flan.
So I want to bring up one more story. I just thought of this story. Sorry, we probably could do 2 podcasts of stories with us.
We could. We probably should.
So, and this is
just as for you making me wait so long to be on the podcast,
right.
You should give me 2.
This is divulging one of my weaknesses in life, and I don't talk about this much, but it's part of the story, so here we go. So I'm not a great spiller. I've never been a great spiller. There's a lot of things that I'm really good at.
There are.
I think that I'm really good at. I don't know, but I like to think that I'm really good at. But one of those things is not spelling. So, and you figured this out early in our friendship, and instead of, I think through high school and through just my life, a lot of people have poked fun at it, and it makes me very self-conscious about it. And I still to the day will send Kimmy usually even text messages that you normally wouldn't get proof. I still send I'm just sending a question to someone asking them if they're free for lunch, and I'll still get Kimmy to proof it to make sure I didn't mess it up in some form or fashion. If you're really close to me, you probably already know this about me. However, you, being the Batman of Friends, have always had my back, and you always, even when this sounds mean. I don't mean it to sound mean, but even when I don't ask you to, you'll proofread my stuff for me. I'll get a text message, be like, "Hey, that post you just posted, this is wrong," and you've always been like, "I hope I'm not I'm not trying to be rude. I just really want to help you," and I've always taken it as you helping me. I've never taken it as like, "Dang it, Greg." Maybe I've said "dang it, Greg," but to the extent that you and I even have a coined phrase for what you do.
That's right.
What is that phrase?
I am the ninjineer.
The ninjineer.
That's right.
I don't know how we came up with that, but you are it's because you were the word ninja.
Yeah, the word ninja.
And then and then when I needed something proved, I would always come and say, I need your ninjineering skills.
That's right.
That's where it came from.
Ninjineer.
So if anybody needs to hire a proofreader, I know a guy. And you told me like sometimes you struggle reading certain print from places because like you'll catch their misspelling.
I do. I can't not see it. I guess that's just the way that my brain works. And I always, depending on how I feel about it that day, I will either credit my high school English teacher, Miss Sarah Bell Day, or occasionally like I will like, why did she make me like this? But like I can't not see the spelling mistake. They jump out to me on the page. I can't not see them. So
and thank you for being that for me. Even today, if I have a bigger, if I had to, I haven't had to in a while, but if I had to do a resume, if I had to make a resume today, Greg Key would proof that resume before anyone would see it, guaranteed.
Yeah. That is probably actually it's the closest thing to an actual superpower that I actually have. I have the super spelling, or super proofing, or
super
something.
Ninjineering.
Yeah, ninjineering. Yeah, that's the coolest name that there's ever been for
something like that.
Someone who points out spelling errors.
That's funny. All right. Well, thank you for being on this podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been worth the wait.
I probably could come up about 10 more stories that we could talk about, but maybe we'll have one again down the road.
We could have an entire one talking about superheroes.
Ooh.
We could talk about my ride in the exploding ambulance.
You haven't told me about that.
Oh, that's a great story.
What?
That's a great story.
You were in an exploding ambulance?
I was in an exploding ambulance.
Oh. We're gonna do a follow up to this. This is gonna drive I can hear people right now in their cars listening to this.
That's right. Now I waited. I dangled that out at the end.
So here's the deal. You can't tell when they come up to you and ask you at church or in the city or wherever to tell that story. You're just like, well, you're gonna have to wait till I tell it on.
Wait till I tell it on the podcast.
So at some point we're gonna schedule another podcast. And actually, we were talking before this podcast. And maybe I'll do this with you. I want to find... I had dreams of having this podcast be in a coffee shop where like it's just two people hanging out, drinking... I drink hot cocoa, but you could drink coffee. And like you hear people in the background and you hear the clatter of cups and stuff and just the ambiance of that. So maybe we'll do a follow-up podcast where it's like story time with Greg and Broadway.
There you go.
At blank coffee shop.
Blank coffee shop.
I don't know whatever.
Or we can go to my favorite place and you can drink the Mexican hot chocolate.
Oh, maybe that's what we need to do. Deal. I'm telling you, people right now are still mad that the exploding ambulance story isn't being told.
It's a great story.
It's a great cliffhanger.
It is. It was quite a day. Quite a day.
What I need to do is I need to think of a couple ones that people probably haven't heard from me, and then you probably definitely have a couple that people don't know about you, and then
literally have story time with Greg and Broadway. It's happening. I'm scheduling it. All right. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. This was a lot of fun. I had fun.
Me too, man. Thanks.
As always, guys, we put out a new podcast every Monday, or I try for every Monday. Forgive me, sometimes things happen and life happens. I've been doing good so far this year. 2020 has been a solid year. If you at all have any interest in sponsoring a podcast, please reach out to me. Facebook, I have a group. If you're not part of that group, go check it out. I put out reminders. You can ask me on that group. You can message me and ask me about sponsorship. Tap me on the shoulder, ask me about sponsorship, whatever. Also, I just want to give one more big shout out to
C Pawn and Gun. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring this podcast.